What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 78 of Nintendo Noise, Flip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, boys.
Ahoy indeed, Max. We're back. We're here to talk about none other than Metroid Prime. It is your week, if there ever was one, Max.
It feels like October 2021 when I came on the show to talk about Metroid Dread. However, the difference there is that you guys actually had played that game.
That's true.
So
That is the difference. You haven't played this, right, Steve?
So I have not played the Metroid Prime Remaster. I did play about 10 minutes of Metroid Prime when I did the tutorial on how you can get the most out of GameCube emulation, which is on our YouTube channel if you want to go check that out. But that's the most I've ever played of Metroid Prime. So I know very little about the game, and I'm looking forward to Max telling us all about it.
We can discuss those 10 minutes, can't we? Do you want me to dive straight in?
Yeah. That's the
okay.
headline today, right? Is Metroid Prime is out. It is, by all accounts, very good. So I'm excited to hear from the man himself.
You've got Samus. You've got Samus. No, it is. Okay, so I remember saying, I don't know if it was to you guys on the show or if I tweeted it or something. I remember saying, like, if Nintendo remastered Metroid Prime, I'm kind of okay. I don't need it now because I've got the Steam Deck and I was playing Metroid Prime on the Steam Deck. I was wrong. This is absolutely well worth them doing it. It's well worth the effort. It is so good. And the what's most interesting about it is, Metroid Prime is a game that I've been shouting about for almost over half my life now. Play this game, and no one has ever done it, right? From my recommendation. Maybe people online might have done it, I don't know, but people like in person, none of my friends who I've gone, you need to play this game, have gone out and done it. And
Just call them out specifically. Like, who have you told who's not done it? I want to know. I need
Steve,
names.
Chris Lake Benson, Steve and Pete. That's Steve and Pete, not a guy called Steve and Pete. I could list them. And it's one of those games that, like, whenever I've said that to them, they've always been like, "Oh, it's an old game now. Like, maybe if it comes to Switch, I'll play it, or maybe if they remaster it, I'll play it." And playing the remaster now, there is the only thing that's impressive about it that is new to this version that is not in the version from 2002 is the visuals. Because everything else about this game that is so impressive, like all the immersive stuff, like the raindrops and the steam on the visor, and seeing Samus's face when you sort of blow a missile up or a beam into the wall so it flashes back at her, like all of that stuff that's so above and beyond for like a game like this was in the original game. But saying that,
I saw something about the rain, right, on Twitter. Everyone was going crazy about like the raindrops, about how it's different from when you look up and down.
Yeah. So the rain's always falling and it's always sort of dripping away. If you're outside on Talon 4, it's sort of dripping on your visor anyway, so the sort of the droplets, and that's very nice by itself. But now there is actually a slight change. They've added that if you look up about past a certain point, the rain sort of droplets travel towards you, but if you look down far enough, they travel away from you, which is just a nice little touch. And I think like Metroid Prime is a game of little touches. There's just so many little like things. They didn't have to have it so that when you walk through Steam, your visor fogs up. They didn't have to have it so that when you sort of move your sort of camera and look around, like move the head, that the edges of her visor are sort of visible, and they sort of move just slightly independently of you, as if you were moving your head and looking like it. All of that stuff is very impressive. But the remastered of it all is that the visuals are also incredible in this remaster. It's not just all of that stuff was already impressive. This remaster is worth it because the visuals are so nice.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen online, that seems to be kind of the headline, but there are a couple like features that are new as well. Like I know that they've added some new accessibility features that didn't exist in the prior releases, as well as I know the ability to move the camera and the weapon independently is something.
Dual stick controls.
Yeah.
Yes. So the original release was very much like you almost felt like a tank in a way, I guess, where like you would look and move with the same button unless you the same stick unless you
like
held
Doom,
down.
right? It's like Doom.
Yeah, very
controls,
much like
you
Doom.
look,
But if you hold down the right trigger, you could look around, but you were standing still, like in Resident Evil.
That was your
like
beef with
GoldenEye
Resident
as
Evil
well.
4 too, right, Steve? Was that you can't
hate that.
you
And that's
can't
what I'm
strafe
really
and
looking
shoot.
forward to in the new Resident Evils. He's like, I want to be able to move and shoot and not like have to stand still to aim. And that was one of the things I really disliked about GoldenEye as well when I went back to play it. It's just like if you want to aim, you've got to like press a button and it replaces the stick. So you don't have like the dual stick controls.
It's
Whereas,
just not
and so-
natural. You know, you're so used
No.
to that now where it's like it's hard. That's one of those things that I think is really hard to go back to, regardless of if the game is good.
If you're someone who only plays Metroid Prime, like if you're like a Nintendo game and your only first-person shooter is Metroid Prime, let's say, and you played it on the GameCube, you still have the option to turn those controls on. The control settings are either the new controls, the original controls, the Wii controls, or like a hybrid of like motion and the new controls. But so how do I describe this? So in the original game, the cannon is always in the same point, right? And if you look left and right, and then you hold down, look up and down, your cannon is always in the center. The cursor is always in the center. In the Wii release, you pointed freely, the arm cannon moved independently, and if you pushed the cursor like far enough left or right or up and down, the camera will then start to pan that way. In the new one, the full twin stick controls, the camera still points, is in the center. But if you turn on the motion controls, it acts as if it was the Wii. The cannon now moves independently. So it's not like they've just sort of added motion controls to the new controls. They've like fully ported over the exact Wii controls, the exact GameCube controls, along with this new thing, right? And it's one of those things I think that makes this the definitive version of the game.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you can just play it any way you like it, as in the ways you've played it before, right? But
or in a new way if you have no nostalgia, right? Which I think that's a tough thing with some of these games, right? Is like how do you take a remaster and not change the core things about the game that make it the game, right? But then also how do you modernize it for new players? How do you make sure that it speaks to the old blood that wants to come back and play it again? Absolutely. But also I'm sure there are a lot of people who have never, like you said, who have never touched Prime, who will touch it now because it's on a modern console. It looks great. It's cheap. It runs well. It really feels like, aside from the ground up remake, it feels like this is exactly what you would want. Like this is
It feels like a new. It feels like a new game. It feels like a modern game, but it is exactly the same Metroid Prime. The bosses are all in the same places. The items are all in the same places. They've not tweaked anything, added anything, moved anything. It's all exactly as you remember it. It's just better because of these new controls and the new visuals. I'm going to talk about the visuals now because the visuals are they continuously impress me.
I've seen screenshots and it's kind of crazy to me that this just gets a remastered moniker to some extent. Like when you consider stuff like Demon's Souls on PS5, right? I think people consider that a remake rather than a remaster.
That's the thing, though.
It looks like a complete overhaul.
That was a from the ground up remake, though.
It wasn't, because Bluepoint started with the base code, they ported that over, and then they added like a layer on top. So like I would imagine that's a similar process that they took here with Metroid Prime. And I think it was Iron Galaxy that worked on this, right?
Yes, it was a combination of Retro and Iron Galaxy. Yeah.
Yeah.
They ported it into the latest retro engine. I think it's called Rude Engine, I believe it's called. So they ported it over into the newer version of the engine. The reason I would say maybe that it's not a full remake over a remaster is that they haven't, where they've ported that code and they have applied like new textures and stuff to it. The animations are all the same. The sounds are all the same. It's still beat to beat the exact same game. It's literally just a lick of paint, right? But it's a great lick of paint. The new lighting that wasn't there before. There's new geometry that's sort of, while it's the same rock face, that rock face instead of being like just flat or something now has like extra bits and it's got extra sort of patterns on it and crags and things like that.
Yeah, and it seems like there's new shaders in there for fire and water and textures and things like that.
Yeah.
Like the way fire behaves seems to be so different from the original game, which looked very much just like it was like an alpha single picture kind of moving, whereas now it's like looks really like fire.
Yeah, like I just had a boss fight up on screen for the YouTube kids, and there's like an explosion, right? And it's like this doesn't look like a GameCube explosion, right?
Yeah.
Like there's little, I think, changes to the textures and things like that really do make it feel more modern.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's interesting because like you bring up the Demon Souls bit, right? And it's like you're right? They did have the original code there to build on, but like those games look so different, right? Like they like it doesn't feel like oh, this is how I remember the game looking, right? Like, and that's what I think this is. Like, this is one of those remakes where you're like, oh, this is exactly what it was like, right? And then you look at the old one, and you're like, oh no, okay, this looks a lot better, and like the changes are more subtle.
Yeah, but I feel like that's similar to The Last of Us Part 1, right? Everyone was talking about how, oh, do we need a remake? It looks the same. And then you look at the comparisons, and it's pretty clear that they're very different.
But
games.
I feel like with Demon's Souls, it's not like that, right? Like that, like I mean,
there's no question with Demon's Souls.
I'm not.
I don't think it ever was a question.
Yeah, like I'm not a Demon's Souls guy, right? But like my best friend is a huge Souls person. I watched him play the original Demon's Souls through, right? And I don't think those games look alike at all. You know, it feels like a reimagining. You know, whereas this,
I think,
is definitely a lot closer to the source material.
Yeah, I think remake and remaster are words that are sort of thrown around a bit too interchangeably, maybe, and because there's not really any true definition of what they mean.
We did a whole episode about it.
Yeah, well, okay. Where was I on that one? Did I?
I think it was before your time. Yeah.
Okay, good for you. Yeah, I think I would. As much as I would say, like this feels like the game feels like if you told me they'd remade it from the ground up and I hadn't played the game before, I'd believe you because there's no way that I'd be playing is thinking this is a GameCube game with nice colors like like when they did the Mario 64 and Galaxy and stuff like that, right? If they were to put like not a nicer coat of paint on those games, I would still know that I'm playing a GameCube game. An N64 game with Mario 64. Whereas this very much feels like a new game, and I think it goes to show how strong the original release was. That in 2002, all of the stuff that's in the game still holds up to this day. Whether that's just coming from me as someone who loves the game and enjoyed the game as a kid, but I genuinely do feel like the game was ahead of its time and is, I'm right near the end now. I'm sort of on the artifact hunt, as people call it, sort of collecting the artifacts around the world to sort of go towards the final boss. And at no point have I been like, yeah, this is a bit outdated or anything like that. I don't know.
I mean, I've not played it, so grain of salt, but I'm inclined to agree with you in terms of it holding up based on the merits of the original game, because I've seen a lot of commentary from people who are like, I've never played Metroid Prime, I have zero nostalgia for Metroid, and I'm playing this for the first time, and it feels like a new game.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, I mean, I think it just goes to show that, yeah, the original is remembered as a masterpiece for a reason, right?
Yeah. And the reviews that are coming in, while we've not got many of them, because there's just not been like had enough time. No one had sort of
it got shadow
there's other things happening. Yeah, exactly. But the stuff there is, I think it's about 14, 15 reviews out now, and it's sitting at about 95, which I think places it, correct me if I'm wrong, is like the highest rated game of this year. Granted, it's a remake, so it's probably not going to be up for contention in other things. But
sure.
I think I think the Game Awards has like or at least they used to have like best remake or something, but maybe it got too prolific. I'm curious as to why this even exists at this point, because it looks like Retro did the majority of the work and Iron Galaxy assisted, from what I can tell from what I've read.
Right.
And I'm wondering if this is just like an outing, like a test for their new engine to get like Metroid Prime 4 ready, and we just like, oh, well, let's port over a game that we're really familiar with, that we know, and we can kind of test out the new fire shaders and test out the water effects and test out the snow.
I'm sure it's both, though, right? Like, it's like, I'm sure that's part of it, where it's like, okay, we're making this new thing, we're taking this project over, we're gonna, like, we want to get reoriented in Metroid Prime. What better, it's like, it's very similar to what happened with EA and the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, right? When they they rebooted, production on the new Mass Effect, and they brought back a bunch of OG talent, and they were like, okay, the first thing we're going to do before we get, really in the nitty gritty on the new game is let's remake the trilogy and let's get reoriented in that world and get comfortable with the tools again. And how do these characters talk? How do they move? Like all those kinds of things. So I'm sure that like on some level that you're right, that it is like a production choice of like, let's get back in the saddle and get comfortable again before we, work on the next gen outing. But I'm also sure that it ties back to what Max said, where like this is a game that came out in 2002, right? 2003.
2002, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a 20-year-old game now, and it's only been re-released one time 2 console generations ago, right? And like Metroid wasn't as popular then, absolutely no shade to Metroid.
Yeah,
But
I'm totally with you. I just think it's such a strange choice, especially considering like, and I'll let Max talk about it in a second. Like the kind of story about what's going to happen with Metroid 2, Prime 2 and 3. Like it feels weird to take the time, remaster this one, and that's it, and then we get just like a straight port of the other two. At least that's what it seems like, right, Max?
I'll go into that. So I remember when we had rumors on the podcast before that where Liam Robertson has said, "Oh yeah, the trilogy's coming." It's sort of sat around waiting, and that could have been true. It could be that they did have the trilogy waiting, and then at some point when they took on Metro Prime 4, they were like, "All right, like Steve said, let's get back into it. Let's remake the first game, for example. Let's test out a new engine. Let's test out our new lighting and our new models and stuff like that." And that could be why they split them up in the end because maybe that's 2 and 3 were ready to go, and they thought, well, actually, let's put a coat of paint on one first and see how that goes. But yeah, so when the rumor then came out last year that actually it was more likely to be just the first one remastered, it came from Jeff Grubb. I genuinely can't remember where he writes for.
he works at Giant Bomb, but
Giant
also
Bomb.
before that he was at Venture Beat, right?
Yes, there we go. That's right. Yeah.
I think he was
So
there
he-
when
Yeah,
he
I think it
reported
was
on
on
it.
his. It was on his Game Mess mornings that he spoke about it.
Yeah, it was. Is that a podcast or a live stream? It's a live stream, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he
live
then
stream and a
splits it up.
podcast? Yeah.
He's
Okay,
everywhere.
Yeah, he does his things. So yeah, he said that Metroid Prime 1 is being remastered now, and that 2 and 3 would be coming, but they wouldn't be getting the same treatment. They'd be getting new controls, they'd probably be getting a high resolution, all that sort of stuff that you'd expect, but they weren't getting the full treatment. And
What does that mean, though? Right, like if they're getting updated visuals and controls, like what is?
Well, no. So I think it's not updated visuals. It's more going to be updated, like as in like just higher resolution. Instead of being at
Gotcha.
480p or whatever it was on the Wii, it's now going to be 720. I don't know, 900, whatever it'll be on the actual TV.
Okay.
So it'll probably be more like the Steam Deck versions of 2 and 3. Not Steam Deck versions, the emulated version where it
As
is
if
running
you
at
were
720p.
emulating them, right?
Yeah, but I think that maybe there will be some nicer things. They might apply some of the stuff. We really don't know. But it does. Today I tweeted this sort of like saying that this is what Jeff Grubb said last year. So it looks like they're not going to be fully remastered. Jeff then sort of quoted that saying correct. So I feel like it's something that's he must know, or that there's whether it's the same thing he heard before. But it seems like that's the case, and we are just going to be getting the two games. Whether they come as a pack or they come in two separate releases, I have no idea.
Oh, they're not coming as a pack. I don't think. I think that's
No,
individual game thing. Yeah.
I would think so, and I'm imagining it's going to be like when they release No More Heroes 1 and 2 at the same time, and they drop them for I don't know how much they cost, but I can't see them being full. The 35, 40 pound.
I hope not,
$40.
especially
No.
considering this is like $29.99 or $39.99 or something. It's
I
like
think
a cheaper,
you're
cheaper
kidding
game,
yourself.
right?
I think you're kidding yourself if you think they're going to be less than that. I don't think there's.
I just think it's. I just don't get it, and like we'll talk about pricing on another story in a second. But it's just like you've taken the effort to really kind of reimagine this and put time and effort in and bring it into a new engine and like update the visuals and models and textures and everything. And the other ones are going to be straight ports, maybe just in an emulator in the same way that you did with, or at least like got run through like a translation layer in the same way they did with Mario Galaxy in that collection. And granted, Mario Galaxy looks phenomenal, and Metroid Prime 2 and 3 they have Wii versions of the games, and like you could easily run those at a decent resolution in 16:9 and add in the dual controls and all of those kind of features and patch in the correct buttons and things like they did with that Mario collection. I just think it's a real shame that you get teased with Metroid Prime Remastered and how good it could be, and then the follow-up games potentially just get released in the form that we've kind of seen them in before, which would,
I
for
mean,
me, it's just like I want all of them to be remastered because I'm
agreed.
actually really excited about playing this.
I am too. My hope is that they see the reaction to this and decide it's worth doing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a possibility. It could be that they go that this sells X amount, how much it's going to sell. I mean, it's doing very well. It seems to be topping charts in like America and Europe on Amazon, places like that. Like it's clearly doing well enough.
Didn't I'm pretty sure I saw someone tweet that it was above the sales charts. It was over the Turf Wizard game.
Hogwarts Legacy,
which is that obviously is like kind of the big release of the moment right now. Baggage aside, And this is a game that got shadow dropped, and it's a remake of a 2002 game, and it's outselling it. Like,
It doesn't come out for 3 weeks digitally, physically as well. Yeah, that is.
it's also
it's
only on
clearly
one
doing-
platform, right? So you
Yes,
got
good point.
I say this to say Nintendo has to be happy with how this is performing.
Yes, yeah,
And it speaks to
They don't officially release physical, digital sales data either. So like,
No.
I'm really curious as to how their digital sales are doing. I wonder if we're gonna get like an update about it, like we did with Pokemon,
maybe.
or whether they just kind of keep it hush and we just have to wait and see in the kind of
Earnings
quarterly
report.
results as to how it's doing.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if they bragged about it because it's probably exceeding what their expectations were. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, oh, like, like they do that every once in a while. Like we talked about that with Splatoon 3, where like in Splatoon 2, like they were like bragging about how many hours people were playing, and they did that with Animal Crossing, and obviously this isn't on that level, but
I really hope they look at it and go, you know what? Maybe we need to release more games at that $40 price point, because I think that does play a factor
Yeah.
into it. It's an older game and it's a remaster, but the fact that it's a $40 experience, like a full game that you can play, I think they really need to experiment with pricing a little bit more in that kind of area and that kind of price point.
I also hope it makes them think more seriously about remakes and remasters and like revisiting their old catalog. Because I think there are a lot of classic Nintendo games that don't need to be remade, and like a straight up port is honestly fine.
Where's Mario Galaxy 2? Like, why can I play the
Yeah.
first one but not the second one on
Yeah.
my Switch?
Well,
Like,
I
give us
would've-
another like Mario pack if you want to. I'm fine to buy another one.
My worry is that whenever 2 years ago when that came out, I'd have been sat on this exact chair saying to you, I think this means they're going to do Galaxy 2, and 2 years down the line, there's not even a whisper of it, right?
no.
And I worry that could happen with it. If it wasn't for Jeff having said what he said, I would probably have said, we're just getting this and
So-
we're just getting this alone.
I hear you, and I understand that concern. I was driving towards this point earlier, and I think there's a reason for this aside from the stuff we discussed earlier about them wanting to get oriented in the engine and everything. Is like, I am of the opinion, I'll say, that I think Nintendo realizes that they have underserved Metroid as an IP. I think like seeing what they did with Metroid Dread, and that the fact that I'm sure that game exceeded expectations.
It sold like 3 million, I think, as well.
Right, and they were confident enough to be like, we're going to make a 2D Metroidvania be a $60 boxed game that is the launch title alongside the OLED Switch, right? Like, I think that speaks to a dedication to Metroid they have not shown in a long time, and I think them wanting to re-release the Prime trilogy at a cheaper price and have it be a good entry point so that folks, who are maybe new to Metroid that jumped on with Dread have something to continue building that relationship, so that Prime 4 is a big marquee title in the way that Zelda is, that Mario is, what have you. I think aside from the fact that like Metroid has always kind of been a series where like the iconography and people know Metroid, but a lot of people don't play Metroid or buy Metroid, yet it also, like, the Metroidvania genre is probably more popular than it's ever been these last 5, 10 years, wherever you want to draw that line.
Indie devs have been like really doing all of Nintendo's work of getting people into Metroid, really.
And
by,
meanwhile, Castlevania and Metroid have been sitting dormant, right? And I think Nintendo is trying to make Metroid a thing again. And I think that they also see that it fits in their portfolio in a unique way, right? Because like Metroid is more adult oriented in a way that other Nintendo franchises just aren't, It's a little darker, it's a little more serious, it's focused on gunplay. Like those are all unique things. And like I think that they see the value in the franchise that they've missed out on, right? They've never quite been able to, I think, have it mature into the franchise that I think it can be for them sales-wise, right? Not just being critically well-received, not just being beloved by, critics and reviewers and, like big dorks like
and
us.
Tastemakers,
of course, right? So I think this is a representation of their desire to double down on Metroid and try to make Metroid, a pillar, a marquee title, the way that Pokemon, Zelda, and Mario are, and I think I think
I
they're
hope
doing
so.
that with a lot of those B franchises because I feel like they're doubling down on Kirby in a way as that they haven't in a while either. And I think that's part of this is wanting to create a pipeline for Metroid Prime 4 to be a bigger release and have folks not have the same complaints they had with Dread, where they're like, "Are you kidding me? Like, there's this new game and there's no way for me to play the ones before it. Like, this is a straight line, right? You should be able to buy this,
I think
get 2 and 3,
I
and
think
then
that's
play
a big
4."
thing. Yeah. I really, you know, thinking about it, if Retro did the majority of the work on this and Iron Galaxy assisted, and Retro's also working on Metroid Prime 4, do they have the time to then also remaster 2 and 3 in time for Metroid Prime 4's release? Like maybe Metroid Prime 4 is due out next year at this point, and they're holding that one for the launch of the new console, and that's the kind of one that's going to usher it in, because obviously that's not going to happen with Tears of the Kingdom at this point. So maybe that's one of the
Yeah, could all
reasons
be a
as well
timing
as
thing.
to why. Yeah.
I also wonder if specifically 3 being a sort of a later game, and it's clearly a lot more detailed in a lot of the things that it does. I wonder if maybe it doesn't need that kind of treatment. Maybe it doesn't necessarily need the full remaster treatment because just up-resing, just improving some things makes it look good enough. I mean, I'm going to give it a go on Steam Deck at some point just to sort of not to fully play it through because I probably will wait and see what happens with the Switch versions now, but just to see, is it noticeably better? Is 3 noticeably better than 1? Um, but I don't know if I'll really see that with the Steam Deck or if I'll have to wait for, you know, them to actually properly up-res it, not just emulate it and up-res it in that way.
So the other thing I do want to call out here is I think there's a non-zero chance that Metroid Prime 4 is farther away than we think. Right? Like I think it's one of those games that like every time we bring it up, it's like, "Oh, is that next year? Like is it imminent?" Right? And it's like it might not be, you know. We felt that way about Breath of the Wild's sequel, right, with Tears of the Kingdom for like 2 years, where it was like it's got to be coming. It's got to be coming. And the thing I always come back to when we think about this game and how far out it is that just about a year ago, they were still hiring people, right?
Now, the big question there is, were they hiring people for that or were they hiring people for this remaster? Could it be that they were hiring people just to work on this, that have then maybe been absorbed into the Metroid Prime 4 team? Could it be that this became a project that wasn't just an idea and something to do, and it became a project of, okay, we're going to release this, we need people to work on this because now the people that were working on it need to be getting back to work on Metroid Prime 4. That's a
Yeah, and
a
that's
possibility.
definitely a possibility. I'll say this. There's an article here from NME from the 27th of 2022. So like I said, just a little over a year ago.
27th of what, sorry? 27th of which
January.
month? Okay.
Yeah, so they this came from NME and it was just them reporting on Retro Studios, right? Like they made a post that day, the 27th, where they were highlighting that they were looking for a tools engineer and a technology engineer on their quote journey to develop Metroid Prime 4. So in the listing, they also had hirings open for an environmental designer, environmental artist, a character artist. So like they're hiring a lot of roles just a year ago, right? That doesn't mean that the game isn't well in development. That doesn't, that doesn't really say anything about the timeline. But that's the thing is that could be representative of a year ago was when they ended pre-production, right? And maybe this project wrapped then, right? Or around then they were finishing this up and then they were moving from pre-pro to full production. So they needed to hire more developers, more boots on the ground. That could be what was happening. It could be that they're hiring more people because Metroid Prime's pre-pro is like still ongoing, right? Character artist, environment artist, things like that. Sometimes those are things you need during pre-production, right? Like when you're coming up with the new locales and who's going to be the new villain or who's going to be, whatever, right? Like those kinds of things. So you look at this and it's like there's a chance that pre-production ended a year and change ago. There's a chance that pre-production ended this year. And that's why this came out. We don't know. And I
mean, they still have roles on their website at the moment. There's like 15 roles on their website. They are hiring a lot of remote workers as well as people in studios. And like the listing says, announced by Nintendo in January 2019, Retro Studios is currently in the midst of developing Metroid Prime 4 for the Nintendo Switch. But I don't think that necessarily is any indication of when it's coming. Like, it could just be that they need people to get it across the line, and they just need to get people in. Like, they're hiring product testers and gameplay engineers and tools engineers. Like, there are a lot of things. Like, there is a producer that they're hiring as well in the engineering department. But I could still see that next year is probably the time for it. Like 5 years, especially if it's back half of next year rather than at the front half
It
of
could
next year.
be.
That gives them another year and a half to get it out.
But to play devil's
them
advocate
time.
to that, right? Like next year could be when we get 2 and 3, and then it comes the year after that, right?
Yeah,
and that would
could
be
be just get-
yeah.
that would be 2 more full years of development.
Could be biannual. You know, let's say we get Metroid Prime 2 tail end of this year, Metroid Prime 3 beginning maybe middle of next year, and then we end next year on Metroid Prime 4. You know, it could be something like that.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, it really does feel like, just based on Nintendo's sort of marketing and the rumors of a new 2D Metroid that are also possibly being worked on, maybe by Mercury Steam, the new website, the new Metroid Portal website they designed. It feels like we're like entering a new golden age of Metroid, and the one that I've sort of,
Absolutely.
after getting into Metroid maybe 2007-ish, that I feel like I missed that era, you know, because I came in at Prime 3, then after that it was Other M and then nothing. This feels like, yeah, maybe we're about to re-enter it, and I'm here for it. To sort of
I'd
have
love
a
that.
more,
I genuinely was in love with Metroid Dread. Like, if we get more 2D Metro and then we also get a bunch of 3D Metro as well. Even if Metroid Prime isn't my bag, like, I don't know if it's going to be my thing. I'm not a massive first-person shooter fan. And even if it's not, I feel like the love I have for Metroid Dread, and if this can kind of give them the momentum that they need to keep the Metroid franchise alive, then great, because I just want more 2D Metroid,
Yeah.
exactly like Metroid Dread.
I mean, I think the thing that's so interesting, and I will let you get the last word here, Max, is like the top tier Metroid boy. But the thing I've always thought is interesting about Metroid is the only Nintendo franchise that I would not call a marquee franchise that has 2 different SKUs. Right?
Mhm.
There's 2D Mario and there's 3D Mario. We know what both of those are. They speak to different audiences, and they're very different, meaningful experiences. Same thing with Zelda, right? We have the top-down old school Zelda, and we have the modern 3D, open dungeoneering kind of Zelda. Metroid is the third example of that, right? Like the Prime trilogy, I'll say, is looked back on very fondly, right? It is a huge critical success. It was one of the most popular GameCube games, the original. And obviously the history of 2D Metroid is rich and beloved. And I mean, I hope that they see what they have on their hands, that like they could have essentially 6 marquee franchises across 3 IP between Zelda, Mario, and Metroid.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Metroid does become that sort of third heat, I guess, but not just because I enjoy it, but because it's also the only, possibly more adult focused sort of franchise. I guess I would say that
Bayonetta, I guess, but that's
yeah, I'm talking like in-house, like they develop it themselves, not just publishing. I feel like, I think it's the only like Metroid Prime. If you look at something like Metroid Prime through 1, 2, 3, they're clearly more adult than something like the Zeldas that were being made at the time and things like that. And Metroid Dread, in a way, feels a bit more violent. It feels a bit more like there's more of a sort of a spookier
Even the
adult.
marketing around it, I
Yeah.
think, and like the
fact
like
that
the
it's named
packaging, everything
Dread.
about it. Yeah.
like Dread is a adult ass name, right? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
feels heavy.
I also feel like it's Nintendo's only, correct me if I'm wrong, Western developed franchise now. Mercury Steam are holding up the 2D Metroid side now. Let's just say the last 2 games have been them. Retro Studios have had Prime always, now have Prime again. Both Western studios, both outside of, the sort of Japanese Nintendo offices and things like that. I feel like it's only that, and I think that's possibly quite important to Nintendo. I feel like you can feel it in that Retro Studios don't feel like they are a first-party Nintendo studio, but they are. They feel
They
like,
have been for so long too.
Yeah, they
for
still
over
call
20 years.
themselves a Nintendo development partner. That's what their website refers to them as. It's very strange.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I think you're right,
that's
Max.
important.
Like Metroid is unique in Nintendo's portfolio in a lot of ways that are meaningful, and I hope this is representative of them recognizing the potential of the franchise, and that yeah, like Nintendo's best known for like the family friendly stuff, but like that doesn't have to be their only game in town, you know, and like it would be cool to see them continue to show that commitment to something that is aimed at, you know, teens and adults for a change.
Yeah.
So just to correct that, Max, there is one other Western studio that they own, which is Next Level Games that they acquired.
Are they
Which
Western?
yeah,
didn't realise
they're
that.
Canadian.
Ah.
And they work on Luigi's Mansion,
They do.
Metroid Prime Federation Force, and they
Ooh.
did the Mario Strikers game.
Yikes.
I didn't know they were Western. But that's interesting. Oh, fair enough. Yeah, look at them go, Vancouver.
Still, it's a short list, right?
Yeah, oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
and even they were working on Metroid at one point. So
So let's finish. I'm going to finish this off with: Are you? So both of you guys are planning on buying this game?
yeah, for sure.
I don't know if I'm getting it right now, just because I've
Mhm.
got so many other things that
I'm in the same boat.
finishing off. But it is on my list, and it was one of the reasons I ended up finally fixing my drifting Joy-Cons, that and Zelda. But yeah, I really want to play Metroid Prime after seeing the remaster.
I have. You guys can take as long as you want to buy it because I've luckily bought myself 3 copies, so it's fine.
Why don't you send me
If
one
you
and
want
then
to share
I'll get
some of
started.
those,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like if you want to send me a copy too, Max, that's great.
I'm keeping 2 sealed. I'm sorry. One's UK, one's Japanese, and I've got my digital one that I'm going to play.
So
Yeah,
what I'm hearing is I need you to buy a second UK copy for Steve and a US copy for me, and then we'll be in business.
We'll see. We'll
Okay,
see. But
cool.
also, they're region free. It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah,
They
you're
are,
right.
yeah. So why did you buy a Japanese one then? Because it just looks
Because it's
cool.
got a different box. It's got the original Japanese box art.
Just for a flex, you know.
Of course, yeah. If they ever do a special edition, we know that's coming. If they ever do more amiibo, we know you're getting those as well. It's all good. We know.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm glad we got to talk about Metroid for 40 minutes for your sake, Max. We'll definitely talk about it more in the future, whenever we get around to playing it. But yeah, very, very, I think, exciting time for Metroid fans right now, and hopefully the future remains bright because it feels like, at least from my perspective, I think this feels like the healthiest the franchise has been, at least since the GameCube era. But I would argue the entire time I've been alive. You know, I feel like this is the most relevant it's felt in Nintendo's portfolio. So love to see it. So we're going to keep the conversation rolling here in just a second, but let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of February. They are, of course, Anthony Gonzalez, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Ty the Dude, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Let's jump into the question block because we've got a question here from one Trendy Brendy who said, Metroid Prime Remastered was insane. What's your dream announcement plus Shadow Drop? So, yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with Trendy Brendy. It kind of coming out of nowhere was certainly a surprise. Very, very cool to see. What game would you like to see get this treatment? Because I think my easy answer has kind of already happened, and it was Advance Wars. Like I was hoping we would get that, where it would just be like, it's out. You go get it now. It's out tomorrow. You know.
I guess, like, are you saying only remasters then? Because like I've got a couple of things, like, right, there's dream announcements that I would love to see,
take it
and then
however you
also
want.
like shadow drops I'd love to see.
Yeah.
I really want another Wario Land game. It's been so long since we've had a Wario Land game, and if they could just be like, here's all of the Wario Land games together, and they're coming to like Nintendo Switch Online, and you can play them all straight away, great. And also, shadow dropping today is Wario Land 5. Like, please, finally give me another Wario Land game. I'm sick of WarioWare. He needs to get back to platforming. I want to play a proper Wario Land game. That would be my absolute dream announcement. I would go mental.
I feel like you got yours, Max, right? Like, it's Metroid.
Yeah, I think I got both of them, really, because originally I would have said a new 2D Metroid, and they announced it and then released it within 4 months. And then I would have said Metroid Prime Remastered, or like, a version of Metroid Prime on Switch, and then they did it and dropped it on the same day. I feel like I could rack my brains forever for any other Nintendo franchise that I would care about them doing a new game in a release, and I just would struggle. I guess I would just say a Mario Odyssey sequel. If he was like, cool, here's a Mario Odyssey sequel and dropped it, great, fantastic.
Can you imagine if they did that like alongside the movie? They're like, oh, by the way, Mario Odyssey.
I really want to do an episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast where we discuss shadow drops and how like insane they are this year already, with Hi-Fi Rush and with Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
And how effective they seem to be in terms
Oh,
of
yeah.
getting people to buy games.
They're not though.
It's kind of crazy.
Like, I mean, I would love to talk about that because I can pull up I have a thread from somebody who's like a PR person in games, and they were talking about how like they were like, I really hope people don't learn the wrong lesson from these two events because they are not representative of like
that's fair.
Normalcy, right? Like with this is a game we've known was in development for like how long, right? It's been like the worst kept secret from Nintendo for like 3 years. And it's like, okay, it just dropped. But yeah, it's a re-release of an old game at a discount. Hi-Fi Rush, yeah, they shadow dropped it, but it's also like they shadow dropped it on Game Pass. That's not the same thing, right? Like nobody's going out and buying games sight unseen day one just because it's out, you know?
What's your excuse for Beyonce's Lemonade?
I mean, it's Queen Bey, dude. Like she
Beyonce.
can do what she wants. Here's my answer to that, Max. Have you listened to Lemonade? Because Lemonade fucking kicks ass. That's why.
That makes perfect. Yeah, you don't know that till you listen to it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Did you all sign up for Tidal for that one so you could listen?
No.
I bet you didn't.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, but we'll save that one for an episode of Flip Screen because then that'll be a good.
We should
debate.
Our review of Beyonce's Lemonade. Yeah, we'll save that for Flip Screen.
Yeah.
We will just completely shadow drop the episode. Like we won't warn anyone it's coming. It'll be on a random ass day. It'll just drop on Patreon.
Lemonade
like,
review.
New show.
Yeah.
I'm into it. That sounds good. So yeah, I kind of in the same boat as you guys. Were like, I can't think of another thing that, because like my dream announcement would be that Pokemon is getting like frozen, right? It's like we're not putting out a Pokemon game for like 5 years, and we're gonna make a new one, and then they shadow
But that's
drop.
happening this year. They're going to apologize and not release a new game, right? That's one of my predictions.
A man can dream, Steve. A man can dream.
Nintendo of Canada apologized. I just need Game Freak to apologize, and then we're there.
Yeah, we're right there. We're right there. So let's jump into our last story for the week. We got the announcement last week, right, alongside the Nintendo Direct that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom would be the first Nintendo game to cost $70. We talked a bit about it on the Direct episode and kind of debated the reasoning behind it and, you know, what does this mean going forward? Because, of course, Nintendo said at the time that this wouldn't necessarily be representative of like all their games making that jump. We do have
we didn't know that when we recorded. Like, it wasn't clear. Like, we'd seen announcements for this and Pikmin, and they were obviously different prices.
Right.
And you took into, like, I think I said, oh, they've always done this on a case by case basis. You kind of took the potential thought path of maybe this is going to be like their next gen title, and they're kind of, it's going to be like a crossover game, and this is going to be the pricing that they're using for that, and they want to make sure it's the same pricing across both. But they spoke to Game Informer. Game Informer Brian Shea over there asked them some questions, and they said that they determine the suggested retail price for any Nintendo product on a case by case basis.
And then when they were asked if this was a trend for titles going forward, they said no, and just again reiterated case by case. So, you know, very interesting question, right? Like it does definitely, I think it feels odd, right? Like it does feel like an odd choice, I think, given the context of like what else is going on and the other stuff we know that they're doing, right? That they have multiple games coming up after this release that aren't going to match that price point.
Yeah, it's what we spoke about last week. It's we can get away with it for Zelda,
right?
Because it's the follow up to the most hotly anticipated game like of all time at this point. It's won countless game awards for the most anticipated game of the following year, and it's still not come out. Versus Pikmin 4, where people are excited about it, but it's Pikmin, it's not Zelda,
right? And it becomes an interesting question because it's like, how do they make that determination? Is it literally just based on popularity? Because like then, you know, and we'll use this as a jumping in point to this the next question we got here. This one comes from one of our Patreon producers, Wakahula, who wrote in and said, what type of games do you think will get the $70 treatment next? I don't think they do this with Pokemon. My best guess would be Metroid Prime 4. And I think that's a fascinating question. right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't they do it with Pokemon then, right? Because if the thought is we're only going to do it with our most popular games, right, or games we think we can get away with charging $70 for, Pokemon's not a part of that. Pokemon's like,
Pokemon has, at least in the UK, never sold for £60. The only other games I can think of that sold for 60 in the UK are Mario Odyssey and Super
Smash
Smash Brothers.
Brothers.
And they're the only other two games that have ever sold for that, like, top-notch pillar
yeah,
price of 60. So I think if they're gonna do it for another game, it's probably gonna be the next Mario game or the next Smash Brothers if they ever release another one, or maybe it's Mario Kart 9.
I mean, I could see
And
what Wakahula's saying in it being Metroid, but it's also like Metroid is less popular. So do you do that with Metroid?
yeah, and I also think Metroid's probably a while off. I think if this is successful and doesn't backfire and people are happy to pay the 70, they're probably going to want to make 70 from the next game. And I really think that that's probably going to be from another like hot title, something like a Mario Kart. If Mario Kart 9 is in development, as is rumored, I could see them easily doing it for that. It's one of those must-buy games that everyone picks up. Why would you not just pay like $70 for it, have it, and you get the DLC for free with the expansion pass kind of thing? I think most people want those games on their Switch.
Yeah, you're probably right. I gotta say, like, this sucks. Like, I feel like this is such a it's exemplary of the things about Nintendo that I don't like. It's just like I just wish they would be more transparent and communicative about like what that decision was made for. Like they're like, oh, we decided on a case by case basis. Okay, so why is this $70? Right? Like,
Because they did market research, they had focus groups, and they were like, "Would you pay 70 for this?" And people were just like, "Yeah, it's Zelda. I really want to play it. I'm
Right.
looking forward to playing it."
Yeah, like what's the most you'd reasonably pay for this? And if the average is 70, they'll go, okay, cool, we'll just do it at 70. Or even the average. If enough people said they pay it for 70, they pay 70 and they go, well, people aren't going to wait, are they? Because it's never going down in price. We might as well just do it anyway.
Yeah, the thing I think is crazy is that the special edition's 130. It's like almost double the price, and it's like it's nice, but I don't think it's that nice.
it's got a hardcover art book. Like that's something you would probably normally spend upwards of $40 to $50 on.
Yeah, I mean, but how much did we spend for the like Link's Awakening set, which had that really cool still book? It had the art book.
I feel like that
It
was like
I think it was
90.
like 90.
Yeah.
And like it's like, is that really? Is it really like another 50 or another 40 or $50 worth more than that? I don't know.
I think I paid there was I pre-ordered Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in 2017 special edition that came with steelbook, hardcover art book and all that stuff, and that cost at the time I pre-ordered it 70. But there was a glitch and I got it for the price of the sort of standard one, so it was 40. But still, that was 70 for all of that stuff, right? And this is 70 for the game itself, or let's say 60 for the game itself. And then all the other stuff almost doubles the price, right? Is it 120 quid for everything else?
Yeah, it is in the UK, 119.95.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah. And it just doesn't, I don't think this feels bad to me, you know? And I think it's very interesting, like how many Nintendo fans I've seen being like, this is fine, while they were criticizing, you know, Sony and other publishers for increasing the price across the board.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like to me, this feels bad. And like I've been vocal about the fact that I don't have a problem with the fact that games cost $70. Like, do I wish they didn't? Absolutely.
I think if it was a consistent, all prices are now 70 because of market fluctuations,
Yeah,
because of
that
the
would
fact
feel
that
less shitty
inflation
about
has risen, I think you'd be like, okay, it sucks, but I get it. Whereas we're charging you 70 because we think we can get away with it for this game, but we don't think we can get away with it for all of our other games, so we're only going to charge 60 for those or less. And then it's like the remaster of Metroid is only 40, but it's like for the remaster of Kirby, it's a full $60 game. It's just like, okay, like,
it's like,
yeah, they did add that epilogue
that has
section
content,
onto
yeah.
that.
So I guess that's
But
the
they've
argument.
added a lot of content into Metroid Prime by the sounds of it, in terms of like we've put a lot of effort into porting over every control scheme ever and all of these additional graphical fidelity things. Like, so there was a lot of work that got put into that as well. And
Yes,
it's
like
just strange.
Why is this 40 but like the Skyward Sword remaster was 60, right? Where like this seems like a better version.
Because it's got Zelda on the cover of that.
I guess.
That's what it comes down to.
But then again, right? Why isn't Pokemon 70 then? right? Because it's like because
Well, it might be the next
the next one.
Pokemon, like, and I know Wakahula says that he doesn't think it's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe the next like mainline one from Game Freak is 70, and they keep like a
The
slightly
remakes.
cheaper price for like the chibi ones.
Yeah.
For the remakes, I could see
Can you
that happening
imagine
as
the
well.
uproar?
I
Can you
mean,
imagine the uproar if it's 70?
I would be.
I mean, people have been paying like for 2 copies of the game for ages anyway. So like, if it's
Yeah.
70, like, is that really that big of an issue?
I
I
mean,
don't know.
yeah, that becomes $140. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a
Unless they do
lot
the
of
double
money.
pack. But then they've
Right.
also got the solution of like buy the vouchers because you can get 2 games for $100, and like that is a solution
That's
for the
limited
Pokemon
though,
games.
right? Like you can't do that forever. It's like you get it when you can
Mhm.
get it, and then that's it. You know, I don't know. Like it's. I mean, I think the takeaway is like all of these games are going to be $70 eventually. Like I think the idea that they might keep a slightly lesser, like, oh, these are 60, these are 50 or whatever. Sure, right? Like I would like to see them experiment with the price a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, they're doing this because they can, and as soon as they think they can do it for Pokemon and Mario, whatever, they're gonna, right? Like they absolutely will. I've been saying it's only a matter of time before everybody else does what Sony just was the first to do. But I think the fact that like it's seemingly without rhyme or reason is like it just feels bad, you know?
Yeah, but I always thought that, oh, it's the next generation, so the price is going up thing was always just like an excuse, because I don't think it just felt like a natural time to do it, but it wasn't really. It was just like an excuse to do it. And I feel like Nintendo's just like, well, we don't really have the same generations as these
Yeah.
guys, but the market is still like not on our side at the moment in terms of inflation, so we're still taking the hit. So it's kind of just like, can we use the generations as an excuse? No, because we're not releasing a new console right now. So,
Yeah.
but we do need to kind of account for this, so we're going to charge for it, and we
Yeah,
think we can
yeah,
get
we'll
away
do
with
this
it with
to
Zelda.
maintain profitability as much as we can, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I don't know, you know, like maybe you're right and I'm giving other publishers too much credit, but like, again, I always talk about it from a US lens, right? Like in the United States, video games cost $60 for the last 2 generations. And the idea that games cost more to make now is just a fact, right? Like we've been talking about this on Flip Screen, using one of like Sony's big studios as an example, right? Well, you say Naughty Dog. In the PS3, they were able to develop 4 different games, right? Which is the first 3 Uncharted.
They definitely definitely take longer. And
they take longer and they take more people.
Good indication of that.
Yeah, and they take more people to do now. And there is there's a shortage of workers, right? So like all those things are gonna extend the amount of time and money that it takes to get one of these big AAA games done. You know, like they worked on Tears of the Kingdom for 6 years, 7 years almost. That's a long development cycle. I'm sure it was an expensive game to make, and I'm sure it costs more to make than other games they're charging $60 for. So like, fair enough, but I think not communicating to the player what is the thing that decides that line leads them up open to criticism like this, where it's kind of like, okay, like, yeah, am I still going to buy the game at 70? Yeah, I am, but I certainly don't, I don't feel good about it. You know, it feels like they're trying to get one over on us, and we know that Nintendo's happy to do that whenever they can.
Yeah, and it's something that's only really affected your market, because in the UK it's still a £60 game. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but you can pick this up online. You can pre-order it for like 50 if you want to.
Yeah,
if you want a
I
physical
pre-ordered
copy.
50. I've already got it pre-ordered. Yeah.
I think it's also more expensive in the European market generally.
It's €65 in Europe, but you're the only market that's getting 70.
Right.
Whereas when Sony did it, it was, we're doing 70 across all regions in that local currency. So it was $70 for you, but we got gouged at £70, and Europe got gouged at €70, which made it like $90.
Well, in Canada,
in the conversion.
Yeah, the Canadian exchange is bad too. You know, it's like yeah. It's weird. It's really weird. It's really weird how varied it is and how little consistency there seems to be, and that like everyone's still just kind of like playing chicken, trying to figure out what we can get away with, you know, and like who's going to be the first to do the thing that everybody's mad about.
Yeah, but like you said, I'm still picking this up day one, day and day. I'm really looking forward to it.
Couldn't keep me away from it.
And it's going to depend on the games that they can get away with. To answer Wakahuda's question, I really think that's all it comes down to. That's what they mean by case, is just we can charge this for it, so we're going to.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right, gang. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Nintendo Noise. If you want to write in and let us know what you're thinking about Metroid Prime Remastered, or how you feel about having to shell out a little extra money to get Tears of the Kingdom, definitely write in and let us know. There are, of course, a bunch of ways you can do that. You can join us over on our Discord, where the conversation keeps rolling between episodes. You can write into us questions at flipscreen.games via email. However you choose to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you for next week's show. If you want to find links to all the places you can write in or get involved, of course, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find all the places we are all over the web. So go click some links and help us out. Doesn't cost you a nickel, but it helps us out quite a bit. So for the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.